Welcome to a video on cost drivers. We know that all products consist of material, labor, and overhead. But how do we allocate overhead? A cost driver is something that directly influences a business activity, and there might be multiple cost drivers associated with each activity. But what does that mean? How do we allocate among a company's different products? We first find out what makes that overhead cost increase. This is the driver. Then we allocate to each product based on the driver. Let's look at the same product and see how different companies have different drivers. There's certainly not all the costs listed here, but some of those we need to make soap. There are various materials we need, and some are listed here. Some companies make soap by hand, and some craft the fancy designs we see in the middle of some designer soap. For labor, we need the crafters if we're making soap by hand, but we also need the technicians who oversee the making, slicing, packing, and shipping of the soap. For overhead, we need machines that work with hot or cold soap making processes. We also need machines to fill the containers or the molds if we're not making them by hand. And while you might think of machines to pack the soap as overhead, we also need insurance for our facilities and for our company in case something goes wrong and someone is harmed by the soap. And we also need a website and advertising. We know how much material and how much labor goes into each batch of soap, but how do we allocate the overhead? How do we know how to allocate the utilities and depreciation from the machines? How do we allocate the insurance, the website advertising, and all other overhead expenses not listed here? Consider Primal Elements' soap-making production process. They have over 150 designs, and their soap is handmade.
The tank, bring it over to our production table, and we add fragrance. Sprinkle some blue and white, what we call snow, on the bottom, shredded soap that gives the appearance of snow. And then we're pouring the hot liquid soap over it to hold it all together. A little spritz of alcohol breaks the bubbles and allows the surface to hold together when we add the next layer. Now what Sonia just put in is snowy. This is our snowman shape. Then we add more of our liquid soap base, binds it all together. A little clean swipe around the edge. After the soap is finished, it goes onto the rack where it'll sit overnight, harden up, and we will take it out of the tub, cut it into 2 loaves, where we'll get 2 loaves of soap that look like this, cut it deli style for their customers, or in the bar form.
As you can see, there is a lot of labor in the product. Some of their products are more detailed than others, and you can easily conclude that the products that use more labor are the products with more overhead of heat, light, washing containers, etc. So the cost driver is labor hours, and it makes sense to allocate the overhead based on direct labor hours, and the products with more labor will have more overhead. For example, it only takes 2 hours of labor to make 1 batch of simple bar soap. In contrast, the baseball soap takes 6 hours because the grass, clouds, and lines on the baseball must be drawn by hand. So we will use direct labor hours to allocate overhead. First, we determine the overhead per driver. If the overhead is $56,000 and there are 28,000 direct labor hours, simple division gives us $2 of overhead for every direct labor hour. Next, we assign the cost to the products. If there are 18,000 direct labor hours used to make the baseball soap, then baseball has an overhead allocation of $36,000. Likewise, the simple soap has $12,000 of overhead assigned, and all of the other soap's allocations total $8,000.
Dr. Bronner's Magic Soaps was founded in 1948 and is most famous for its pure Castile soap. The brand produces over 14.3 million bottles a year.
Then consider Dr. Bronner's soap manufacturing process. Technology has advanced production, so there isn't as much labor as with Primal soap. As you can see, the distribution of soap and the containers is the same speed for all products. Given that information, we don't want to allocate overhead based on direct labor hours. But as we watch the soap bottles, we realize something else. The more bottles of a product, the more time they spend with the machine. In this case, the cost driver is machine hours. Like we did before, first we determine the overhead per driver. If the overhead is $75,000 and there are 100,000 machine hours, simple division gives us 75 cents of overhead for every machine hour. Next, we assign the cost to the products. If there are over 70,000 machine hours used to make the most popular product, peppermint soap, then peppermint has an overhead allocation of $52,500. Likewise, the eucalyptus soap has $12,000 of overhead assigned, and all of the other soaps' allocations total $10,500. I hope this helps you understand why cost drivers are important. Please remember, there can be a few drivers, so allocate overhead based on the best driver. Please also realize the driver may change. As technology has become less expensive to purchase and implement, it has been used more and more. So if machine hours wasn't the best driver 5 years ago, a change in the manufacturing process may make it a driver in the future. Of course, that is if the cost to find and allocate overhead is less than the benefit from allocating based on that cost driver.